We begin in Gaza City, where Israeli forces have fired at a crowd of Palestinians who were waiting to collect humanitarian aid. It was the 9th day in a row that there were reports of Israeli troops firing at crowds in Gaza City. Palestinians had been gathering at the Kuwaiti roundabout there, desperate to pick up food for their families. Also, the Palestinian relief agency UNRWA says that Israeli forces opened fire on its trucks carrying humanitarian aid for northern Gaza. It released these pictures of trucks that it says were hit by naval gunboats earlier on Monday. It's unclear exactly where the convoy was during that attack. Aid agencies say that Israel has been blocking aid to the north of the Strip.
This morning, it was not the first time an UNRWA convoy with the United Nations was attacked. It is the third time a convoy belonging to UNRWA has been exposed to attacks on its way to the north or when it's coming back from the north. And this is not acceptable. Humanitarian convoys, according to international humanitarian law, must be protected from all parties to the conflict, also during combat.
We can talk to Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud now. Hani, you're reporting from Rafah in southern Gaza. You're hearing and finding out about the latest strikes overnight in Gaza's second largest city, Younis. What have you learned?
Yes, good morning, Cyril. In overnight attacks in Younis, the western part of the city, mainly in Hamad residential compound. This is not the first time this residential compound being targeted. At the initial weeks of attacks on Younis, they were targeted heavily. At least 4 of the residential towers were completely level to the ground. But what happened overnight, it seems more of like a target killing in one of the apartments inside one of the residential towers in the compound. 6 people have been reported killed. There's 1 child among those who were killed, a woman as well. What we were told from a source on the ground, this is a displaced family and has been sheltering in that apartment since the beginning of the war. They came all the way from the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Now, what's really devastating about this attack is the fact that ambulance and civil defense crew are unable to get to the site given the intensity of the bombing and the artillery shelling and the heavy presence, dense presence of attack drones in the skies of Younis, mainly at the western part, that are shooting at every moving object, including people who are trying to leave the targeted areas into a safer ones, and also on cars, particularly on civil defense vehicles, as well as ambulance. We're trying to get to that area to save those who might have survived the attacks and needs to get to the hospital. In Gaza, similar situations are taking place with reports of... Yes?
So I'm so sorry to interrupt, so our viewers may have noticed that there's a slight delay. Look, I was going to ask you about the footage that we opened the show with of people in Gaza City who were queuing for humanitarian aid and were fired upon. It's not the first time this happens. What have you learned about that event?
Yes, we're actually looking at least 2 weeks between the first incident and what happened yesterday, as people will gather in large groups on Salah ad-Din Road near an area better known as a Kuwait roundabout. This is at the edge of Gaza City before getting into the central areas of the strip, where people gather in group waiting for humanitarian trucks to be delivered to Gaza City and the northern part. They were fired at by tank shells as well as heavy machine guns. Many people were critically injured. There are also reports of those who could not make it to the hospital as their injuries was so critical. They lost their lives on the way. At the same time, there was another convoy of humanitarian trucks passing through the coastal road. That's the western part of Gaza City, Rashid Road, where it was fired at, and based on a statement by UNRWA, that's the United Nations for Palestinian Refugee, this is not the first time its own trucks and properties being attacked or shot at. And not only we're looking at trucks, but also schools and evacuation centers in Gaza and the northern part, managed and operated by UNRWA, been under heavy attacks, all feed into the Israeli plans of pushing UNRWA out of providing assistance and help to Palestinians on the ground at these difficult times.
Hani, thank you very much for that. That's Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud reporting from Rafah.